Hi, Mick. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ethan. My pleasure to be doing your show.
I really appreciate you taking the time out and coming on. We'll go to this back to the start, really. What was your childhood like in Manchester, and when did you first take an interest in music?
Well, we I grew up in Wythenshawe, which is a really rough working class um, estate, and we were very poor, as kids. We had a tin bath, not a proper bathroom. So, but there was something beautiful about the simplicity of life when you were a kid, because it was just really all about your mates and hanging out on your street. So the poverty thing didn't really register. We just thought that's how it was. Um, so it was a little turbulent. My father was an alcoholic, so that didn't go well at times. But overall, childhood was pretty good. And my first awakening of music was I remember being in the council flat and Top of the Pops came on. And I saw Bowie do Starman. And it fucking blew my mind because I really thought it was an alien. He had no eyebrows. And then when he pointed at the camera and went, I had to phone someone, so I picked on you. And I actually thought he was pointing to me, like, 15 million other people did that night. But yeah, that was the first time that music really kind of penetrated into my very soul. It was fucking amazing. And then, of course, I gravitated to the blonde guitar player, Mick Ronson, who we became good friends down the line. But yeah, that was my first introduction to thinking, what the fuck is that? I want to be that guy. So,
You mentioned when you're a kid, you're not really like bothered about the area you grow up in and stuff. But you mentioned your father was an alcoholic and it could be tough at times. Did you sometimes see music as a way to escape and get out of Manchester?
eventually, Ethan, that's a very good question because eventually that was my savior. Um, because it was very grim. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but the North was a very fucking bleak Dickensian uh, place to live in at that time. We were hand to mouth. Um, and so most of my friends and myself at that time, we were just scallish. I mean, we were doing all sorts of things that one shouldn't do. And if I would have stayed on that path, it wouldn't have ended well for me. I'm sure. So music was a savior. Um, and when I saw the Bowie thing on Top of the Pops, and I gravitated to Mick, I I asked my mom, I want a guitar. So again, we were so poor, so we went to a place called Moss Side, which is a very rough area on the outskirts of Manchester, and there was a second-hand store, and there was an acoustic there, which was for £6, which was about $12. But even then, that was a big ask because we were so poor. But my mom bought me this guitar, and the action was like this, and that's away from the fretboard. So it was like playing tow ropes, the strings. But I learned to play on that. And then right early on, I started to try to write songs. And most of them early on were really bad, but at least I was forming like, you can do something here. So I think at that time, and around 14, 15, I think there possibly could be a way out through music.
How old were you when the Slaughter and the Dogs got together?
I think I was around 14 when we started kind of thinking about it because we just wanted to be a glam rock band. Um, I wanted to be Mick Ronson, and I didn't even know what a Les Paul was, what he played. I didn't know. So when we met at school, the other members of the band, and so being around 14, I think 14 was when we started thinking, yeah, let's get a fucking band together, man. That would be cool. Um, and we wanted to obviously be like that. But then when the Pistols came along, that changed everything. So
Well, you were right at the start of the punk scene, and people
Mm,
say like punk gave them the um, courage really to be artistic and follow what they wanted to do. Because before that, like it was another world, music and art and stuff.
mm.
What was it about glam rock that made you feel like that before punk came along?
Well, I think what Bowie did, I think he was so outrageous and so at the vanguard of fashion, change, music. He made it all right for you to dream, certainly for me. And he made it all right for one to think outside the box and try and be brave and go for it. So it was really Bowie that was the blueprint of like there's something going on here, and his music and the way he presented himself and the way him and Ronno were together, it was like a pathway in. So you're like, fuck it, we can try that. Even if I couldn't play, I want to be that guy. So that was the first insight for me that it could be done, you know.
Yeah, definitely. You were one of the early punk bands in the UK. What was it
Mm.
like those early gigs when you'd playing people hadn't heard this kind of music before?
It was great actually because you know the whole thing about being in a band, it's like a gang. You know, we were all so young, so it was from the streets into the dodgy transit van, going to do the dodgy labor clubs, which we were doing. And so it was basically there was no difference. It was Scally's on the street. Now we're in a van. Now we're going to go and play this dodgy club. It was great because we felt like we were doing something outside of what was expected of us. And so those early gigs in the labor clubs, they were hilarious because we was literally going on between the Frank Sinatra impersonator and bingo, you know, all the fours, 44, you know. And so we were still trying to emulate glam rock. And we'd written a bunch of songs, but we were doing cover versions. So we were doing the Gene Genie, Suffragette City, Roxy Music, Both Ends Burning. And it was hilarious because the Labor Club audience were like fucking stunned. Like, who are these? You know? So we got banned from a couple of places, and I remember one club they paid us to go home because we had to do two sets, and we're like, no, 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 we got our best songs for the last. They're like, fuck off, you're out of here. It's fucking rubbish. But it was great. It was great character building, Ethan. I have great fond memories of that stuff. You know.
Was that the most exciting time in the band then?
Mm-mm. I don't. I wouldn't say exciting, but it was the what's the word I'm looking for? We were moving at a very fast clip, and so it was it was more we were exploring at a rapid uh, uh, pace. But when when the punk rock movement started, that's when it really was an explosive uh, nation moving as one. And you could feel it, good or bad, whether you like the bands or not. It was this fucking nation pushing against the system. That was really exciting to be a part of that because you could feel there was an energy, an underground energy. You could just feel it. And that's when you really had, where anything went and you puffed your chest out and you're like, we're a fucking, because I always found us as a street rock and roll band, you know? Um, but they were the most exciting times for me is when collectively the nation was moving as one.
When did you realise there was this punk scene starting? What was your first indication of that?
Well, when we were kids, we used to in Wythenshawe, we used to on our bikes, we used to ride to there's a newsagent stand near the airport, near Manchester Airport, and it was the only place that would have NME, Melody Maker, and Sounds, all those mags at the times that was like a Bible to us. It was so important because it informed us what it was like outside of Wythenshawe because we were cocooned in because you got to remember, man, we had four channels on the TV, and the nearest we had into a different world was maybe Kojak or the streets of San Francisco because that was an exotic world, you know. So these sounds and NME, it was getting those magazines, and then we first heard about the Pistols and the New York Dolls. You know, I'd heard about Lou Reed because of my fascination with Bowie and Mick Ronson. So anything connected to Mick and David at that time, I would try and find out as much information as I could. But it was really, I think it was the NME that had mentioned there was this punk rock band called the Sex Pistols. And so that was the first time it came on the radar. And there was a journalist for Melody Maker called Caroline Coons, and she coined the term punk rock. I mean, look, it's been around a long time, and punk, she's just a young punk, and but she actually coined that term. And at the time, there was only five bands, and we were one of those five, you know. So it was through the music papers, 75-ish, 76, I think, that punk rock came on our radar.
Well, in '76, you played the Lesser Free Trade Hall with the Sex Pistols. What can you remember about that day and that gig?
Oh, Ethan, man, that was life changing for a lot of people, including myself, because we had a really big local following at that time, and which was unheard of. We actually rented the Forum Hall in Wythenshawe. It's a big hall now. They have plays there. We independently rented that. My brother was our manager at that time, and he independently rented the hall. And we got Tony Wilson. Um, for us, it was like it's the geezer off the telly that's going to introduce us. That's all we knew. He was on the telly, and I remember he turned up and he had clogs on and a handbag and flared jeans, but he looked fucking cool. So we had a big following locally. So when the Pistols things happened, there was two shows, one with the Buzzcocks and the Pistols, and then they did another one a few months later. The first one, there was only about 30 people there. And the other one is when we did it, and word had gotten out about how brilliant the Pistols were, and it was fucking packed. So Malcolm had approached us, Ray, about us being on the gig, and they were like, "We've heard you're a local band and you have a good following," and we're like, "Yeah, man, yeah, fucking yeah." So, but we were still trying to be. I was still trying to be Mick Ronson. You know, there was a Bowie vibe to the band, and we were still doing covers. But what I remember watching the Sex Pistols soundcheck Anarchy in the UK, and I don't think it was out, but I didn't even know what a phaser was on the guitar. So Steve starts this riff, bah, 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 and it's got a phaser on it through his pedal. And then John, I think, if memory serves me, I think he had a cold, but he had the lyrics on a snotty bit of paper. And they just fucking went. It was like looking at Richard III being a rock star because he was all twisted and bent. It just blew my mind, man. I mean, the power of this band, and Glenn is such a brilliant bass player. Um, and it just fucking shook my very foundation. I was like, holy shit. Um, so that was one of the things that stood out of that particular gig, that there was something happening here. This is the future. I'm looking at fucking history live as it's happening, which was a wonderful feeling. And then, of course, the gig at the night time. I remember Paul Morley used to work for the NME because it went off that night because we were still trying to be this glam band. There was a big fight, and our roadie got bottled, and there was blood all down him. And I remember Paul Morley had long hair and a Hawkwind t-shirt on, screaming at us because we were still trying to be, well, I was fucking, you know, like a glam band. And there was a big fight in the audience. It was fucking great, man. Because listen, you know, when you're from the north, you get stuck in, and so it was chaos, but it left such an impression. So we went back to the rehearsal which was a scout hut in Wythenshawe, which the scouts had let us use when they weren't using it. And we just looked at the songs and went, we've got to turn up. That's got to go. That fucking thrilly bit. Because, I was trying to be Mick Ronson. I was too young. I hadn't formed who I was. So it was a bad version of everything. So we slimmed down the songs. The Pistols was the blueprint and they led the way. So that was what I remember about that gig. It was fucking packed. And now it's a very famous gig in Manchester history because everyone says they were there. So and if everyone says they were there, there'd be 3,000 people at that gig. So,
Did you see, like you say, a lot of people say whether they were there, and people who were there went on to form bands.
yeah, yeah, man, yeah.
Would you see these people at your gigs through the years?
Yeah, and periodically, I'm very good friends with Billy Duffy from the Cult, and Billy lives out here. And Billy and I did some stuff together when we were younger. So yeah, you'd see him periodically. Obviously, we cross paths with the Buzzcocks. We'd done some festivals. Once it started to, bless you.
Thank you.
Once it started to roll, then you would, if there was a festival, you would see similar bands.
Yeah,
But we were Ethan. We were still classed as outsiders because we weren't art students and we weren't middle class. We were more like, let it out, man.
I
They
can't.
come in breed.
Sorry about that. Oh Jesus, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
let it out. But we were more like, in terms of attitude and spirit, more like Oasis, who I adore. I fucking love Oasis. So we were still classed as outsiders in that kind of art scene. People who had read all the right books, and we were still very much these ruffians, and people looked on us as that, as the scallies from Wythenshawe. So.
What? So after that Sex Pistols gig, is there any gigs that stick out? Well, even before the Sex Pistols gig, is there any gigs that stick out to you?
I think we did the Marquee Club, and I remember Johnny Thunders turned up, Ringo Starr turned up, uh, Gen X, and I think a couple of the Damned were in the audience, and it was sold out, and you're like, fucking hell, man, yeah. And so it was a real boost to your ego having these other contemporaries who are all brilliant in the audience. So that was a special gig. I think doing Eric's Club in Liverpool was a real special. It's the night we got signed. So that was a special gig. And Steve Gibbons was there. And I remember our roadie had nicked his leather jacket. And it was we had a thing called the hernia, which was a trunk where you put all your cables in and fucking all your gear. And the roadie had nicked his leather jacket and hid it in the trunk. And I remember him coming into the dressing room, and it's like, look, we know you've nicked the jacket. And we're like, I had no idea. I'm like, we haven't fucking nicked your jacket. But the roadie had nicked his jacket, and we had to come clean and give it him back, because I said to the fucking roadie, if you fucking nicked it, fucking get it out now. It's an important gig. So that stood out because it was funny. And then later on years, like, we did CBGBs, which was, to actually do that. And then we supported the Heartbreakers on a tour. So that was always, it was a thrill. So Leeds University, what I was talking about earlier, that was a standout gig. Because Johnny took a shine to me, and he'd be like, let the little guy use my amp. And I'm like, fucking little, we're the same size. We're both Italian, we're the same size. Less of the little. And I had shit gear because we were poor, and he let me use his Fender Twin on some gigs. So shit like that when you're a kid stays with you. So they were all memorable moments. And of course, I'm jumping ahead here, but having Mick Ronson play on Do It Dog Style was fucking blew my mind. But anyway, so stuff like that, yeah.
You mentioned you were writing songs when you first got a guitar, and you were still playing covers at the Sex Pistols gig and stuff. So when did
Mm.
you bring your own songs into the set, and when did you take it really serious?
About a week after we supported the Pistols, we went back to rehearsal, and the original songs we had, uh, we changed them up. Like the bitch, which is on the B side of Cranked Up Really High. Originally, that was like this fucking flowery kind of. It was just odd. It had this mad middle eight in. So we went back and went, fuck that, turn that up. Runaway was more, it was just more trying to be like the Faces or something. So we knew right away about a week after, and then we just said, look, we can't be doing all these covers because we were starting to form our identity. So it was about a week after, and then in terms of songwriting, we were increasing our songwriting output, So
So was this at this time were you starting to write the debut album then?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that debut album, we went back to the drawing board after the Pistols show, and within about, I'd say about a month, we had a proper set, which was our songs. I mean, we always we did Mystery Girls in the set because the Dolls were a really big influence on us, and we did Waiting for the Man. And we only did Waiting for the Man because I knew fucking Bowie did it with Ronno at Hammersmith Odeon. So we're like, oh, we want to do that. So about a month after we had the bones of Do It Dog Style, and then with the punk rock movement, then it was like a freight train because it caught fire really quickly, and it was like this juggernaut coming at you, and we were kind of in the mix there, and luckily we had our set, and like any band early on, that live set becomes your first record.
Yeah.
And it's rehearsed because that's all the songs you have. So
You mentioned there the New York Dolls, and with the debut album, I think it sounds more like New York Dolls, Ramones, the American punk
mm.
at the time compared to the UK punk.
Well, that's kind of, I'd like to say that's what we were going for, but to be honest, we didn't know what we were going for because we didn't know any better. So there's a great thing about naivety, Ethan, is when you're young, you don't know any better, and you've got nothing to judge it against on yourself. You can judge it against your peers, but you just go in, and at that time we were acting on pure instinct and pure adrenaline and pure moxie. We're a fucking Manchester band from Wythenshawe, and if you don't like us, we're gonna fuck you up. That was our attitude back then. So it was yeah, it was just yeah, it was moving at a pace, and I've lost my train of thought. Remind me.
Oh no, I was just saying the album sounded more like the American punk, like
Yes,
Ramones did.
yes. So we went into the studio, and we had a producer called Nick Talbot, and 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 you don't get a choice when you're a kid. They just say he's going to produce your record, and you're like, okay, thank you. And he'd done Whiskey in the Jar, but our influences were always mine anyway, as a writer and a guitar player. It was always that kind of street rock and roll, as I said. I wanted to be Mick Ronson. I wanted to fucking look like him. I wanted to play like him. And then the Dolls, I was like, oh, fucking Johnny Thunders, man. So it was, I think subconsciously it seeped into what I was writing at the time. So the album came out the way it came out. And I'm kind of glad it has a underlining Stoogey Dolls feel to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you worked with Martin Hannett on the first single. I was going to ask how come he didn't do the album.
I don't know. Well, Martin was a genius. He just we got popular very quickly around the kind of Manchester scene, and then we were approached by a guy called Tosh Ryan who had this label called Rabid Records. Um, and again, we didn't know. We were like, they're like, you want to make a record? We're like, yeah. He's like, you're getting 25 quid. We're like, as much as that, 25 quid? Fuck it, we'll do it, you know. So we got 25 quid each. And that particular song cranks up really. I think it's been on fucking 37 compilation albums, and we sold everything for 25 quid. I remember getting the bus home, counting the money, going, fucking loaded, man. So Tosh Ryan says there's this guy called Martin Hannett, and he's going to produce you. And again, we didn't know, and so Martin just says, you plug into that amp and play how you play live, and the vocals are done in the toilet because it was a small studio. I don't know why we didn't progress into using Martin, because when we signed, they just said you're using this guy, and we were like, okay, you know. But the highlight for me, Ethan, was having Mick play on Do It Dog Style, you know, because I got to befriend Mick Ronson when this is pre-Slaughter the Dogs. I met him. I was too young to see Bowie, and I remember I bunked off school when Mick announced he was doing the Slaughter on 10th Avenue tour to support his solo career. And so Free Trade Hall got tickets. I think the tickets were 50p, fucking 50p to see Mick Ronson. And so he comes on stage. We rush the stage, Ronno. And he goes like this, you know. So all my friends are like, it was me. I was like, no, it was fucking me. It was me. He pointed at me. So we wait outside to try and get an autograph. And he's ushered off from the backstage onto a coach, and off he goes. So you're like, fuck it, man, you know. And this is when Trevor Bolder was still playing with him from the Spiders, Mike Garson. And so we go to, I get tickets for Sheffield, and we get the coach up to Sheffield to see him. Now we have no money, so I've got a sleeping bag. So we're going to sleep on the coach station floor after the show because we can't afford a hotel. So we go to the show, rush the stage, Ronno. He goes like this. And I'm with two friends. They go, he's pointing to me. I was like, no, he's pointing to me. Right. So anyway, so this time we wait outside to the backstage area. He's ushered onto the coach with the minders around him. And this is the time when, you know, he was a superstar. So you're like, fuck. Anyway, rushed onto the coach, and off he goes. But this time I start running after the coach, and the fans drop off. So there's me and my buddies, and we're running, 1 block, 2 block, and there's no one around. And it's fucking raining. I'll never forget. 3 blocks, run out. And the coach just stops. And then the doors go, psh. And Ronno sticks his head out and goes, come on if you're coming. So we get on the coach, and I'm catatonic, man. I'm just like, I'm literally just staring at him. And he says, I saw you in Manchester. And I was like, see, it was fucking me. And I've told this story before, but it's so close to my heart, and speaks volumes about who Mick Ronson was. Not only a guitar genius, and without him, there would be no Ziggy and Hunky Dory and Aladdin Sane. He was massively an integral part of those. But Mick, at that night, there was a party because it was the last show of the tour, and he says there's a party at the hotel. You know, you're invited. So we're there, and we're actually nicking food off the plates that's going round because we didn't know it was free. And you know, your scally comes out. We were starving, so I'm looking at sandwiches and fucking nicking this shit. And he sees the sleeping bag, and he goes, and I'm like, I'm in a band, Mick. I'm in a band. I'm a guitar player, you know, trying to get it all out like really quickly because I was so nervous. And he saw the sleeping bag, and he says, what are you doing? And innocently, I just says, we're sleeping on the coach floor because the next coach is 8 in the morning, you know. And he disappears and comes back and gives me a hotel key. And it's the first time I'd been in a proper hotel, Ethan, because the nearest I'd been on a holiday was a caravan in Blackpool. And that's what you did. So I'd never been in a hotel room. And here's how naive I was. In the morning, I made the bed because I didn't know there was maids or you know, people did it. And I thought it'd make a good impression. But that next morning, I spoke to Mick, and and told him I was a guitar player, and he gave me his phone number. So that was the start of our relationship, and it led to Mick being on Do It Dog Style, you know. So,
That's amazing. That like meeting your hero and it being like that.
and you know what, Ethan? It just showed me what a beautiful man he was to do that to a fan, an unknown little kid, you know, who has aspirations to be a guitar player. That he took the time. He was so generous in spirit, and an amazing, my hero still to this day.
Your guitar playing is brilliant on the album. What was it like when, sorry, when he'd come in the studio do his bit? Did you watch him in the studio?
Oh yeah, it fucking blew my mind because I didn't realize the ask. Because I rang him up, Mick, I just got a Les Paul. I just bought a Les Paul, like a kid, you know. We're doing an album. You should play on it. And he went, all right. And you know, it was just my moxie and naivety. And
Yeah.
so he comes down to the studio. He fucking plugs in. I didn't know it. I just turned everything up, and he plugs in and just goes like this on the amp, and there was a Ziggy Stardust sound. And I'm like, fuck. It was amazing, man, to be this close to your hero and watching him do his thing on your thing, on my thing. Fucking unbelievable. So unbelievable. So I was obviously I was in awe of everything. And that's why those stories, I know them very clearly. You know, you forget shit along the way, but this particular story and my relationship with Mick is it's still clear as hell for me. So um, it was amazing seeing him play. I love it actually because Noel Gallagher was asked several years ago if David Bowie was still alive, what would you say to him? And he paused and he went, thanks for Mick Ronson. Like, fucking yes, no. Yeah. So, anyway.
Well, there's a line in the song Since You Went Away which says, You said I had to choose you or the band. And that
Mm,
happened with the singer at that time, really, didn't it? Ironically.
it did, yeah. Ironically, it did, yeah. He he fucked off, left us in fucked off twice, actually. Um, he was very naive, but he was also very selfish. And yeah, he left us in the lurch a few times. And I mean, I don't know if you know the whole story, but there's a whole bit of, you know, bad blood of what he's done. The thing is, Ethan, right? When you're stupid, you don't know you're stupid, right?
Yeah.
And he somehow blames me for his lack of talent to this day. And so you just, you know, hey man, do you get on with it, do your thing, leave us alone. Um, and he did, yeah. At a couple of crucial times that he bailed on the band, and I just thought it was a very selfish thing to do. Um, and so there's nothing you can do with it about that except just, you know, get on with it. And really, it's a kind of blessing because it revealed who the person was, you know, and what's really inside them and what makes them tick. And it's for all the wrong reasons, you know. So
Well, the band split. Was it right? The split before the debut album even came out.
no, the album just come out, I think, and he yeah, he fucked off after that. Yeah.
Did you feel like it was over just as it had started to get going? Really?
Hmm. Yeah, I actually did actually. It's very perceptive of you. It was but again, it was all coming at us so fast. So we didn't really have time to take stock um in what had happened. Just that like, oh well fuck, that's fucked up, isn't it? It was kind of just we kind of took it in our stride. I mean, we did draft in Eddie Garrity for the second album, and we did the second album called Bite Back with Morgan Fisher, the drummer from Mott the Hoople. He produced the album, and we got the keyboard player from Morgan not Morgan Fisher, Dale Griffin, sorry, produced it, the drummer, and Morgan Fisher played keys on it. So we just plowed forward, and just thought, you know what, fuck it, we got all these songs, you've left us in the lurch. He was an absolute cunt, really, because I remember we had the studio time booked, and the three degrees wanted the studio, and we says, no, Slaughter and the Dogs are going to have it. And so when he fucked off, the record company says, we're going to bill you anyway, whether you
Yeah.
make the album or not. And it was back then, it was like something like 23,000 quid, which, fucking still a lot of money. But and so that's why we got Eddie in at the last minute. Um, but it was a very, very uncool thing to do to your bandmates. But as I said, man, when you're stupid, you don't know you're stupid.
Well, he came back with you a bit like, what's the right word? Like, you didn't want him back when he did come back.
Mm.
Like you've left us at that point, why are you coming back now, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a mistake because we were like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get the first singer back. Um, and looking back on it, we should have just kind of left it at that and cut the ties when we did. But yeah, listen, man, when you come back, it's like, what does that tell you? The grass ain't so greener on the other side. And to this day, outside of Slaughter the Dogs, he's done that. So
Well, you mentioned you brought in Eddie for the second album. Were the songs already written at this point then, or did you write with Eddie and
no, I had three or four written, which I'd written myself, because normally I co-write. So I had three or four that I'd written myself, and I think Howard, the bass player, original bass player, I think Howard had written a couple, and so when Eddie came in, we basically just went at it for about a week or two, and we found ourselves. It was kind of cool because you didn't have chance to second guess yourself. It was like, oh, that sounds fucking cool. So we locked ourselves away and wrote the remainder of the album. So when we went in, I think we had 11 tracks. So it happened very quickly because we knew Eddie from the scene. Eddie was part of the Manchester scene. He had Ed Banger and the Nosebleeds. And Eddie was a great frontman and a great lyric writer too. So
was it at this point Morrissey joined them? Well, like just before, or was it later on when Morrissey's?
it was after that. It was, yeah, after Bite Back, because I went off. I'm trying to. After that, I went and did an album with a guy called Gary Holton.
I was going to
Who?
ask you about that because I'm a big fan of Alfie, same pet, but are we okay to talk about that soon?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I
Oh,
went off
brilliant.
and did other things, and then I was looking for a singer because I didn't feel comfortable singing. It's funny now because I have a band called Gun Street now where I'm the singer, and then I had a band called The Duelists where I was singing, and it's kind of like you grow into it. It's like Johnny Marr, who's an absolute man legend, a great guitar player, but he's grown into being a great singer too.
Yeah.
So he really fits that position. I saw him out here in LA a few months ago, and I mean his guitar playing is brilliant, but I was so like, whoa, man, he's singing great, and he's really kind of fallen into that role. So at the time, after the Bite Back thing, I didn't feel confident, and so Billy Duffy says, I know this singer called Stephen. I'm like, bring him down. So we go down to rehearsal, and there's a guy in a duffel coat with a hood on, very introvert, not like the guy we see today. And so we had a couple of plays, and we tried to kind of write a couple of tunes. But I always find him very introvert, and I at that time I was looking for David Johansen. I was looking for Iggy Pop in my mind. That's who I wanted, this fucking guy to be a really one of those really outward going showman. And Morrissey was the opposite at that time. But I just remember his lyrics were like, what? But again, I was too young to understand the genius of what he was doing, lyrically. So we had to go with him, and I was like, well, that's not going to work out, is it? Because I'm looking for Iggy Pop.
I can't imagine
What?
Morrissey in a punk band. You can't like picture it, can you?
No, I know, but we were, as you said about the first album, it was more Dollsy, and Morrissey was a huge Dolls fan,
Yeah.
and so I think maybe that's why there was a possibility that this could fit. But you can't imagine him now being anything but who he is.
How did he sing? Did he have the voice he had like with the Smiths and now, or did he sing differently then?
I actually can't remember. That's the honest answer. I can't remember. I just remember him being very introvert and close to himself. But I actually can't remember. I'd love to spin you a tale and say, yeah, it was this, that, and the other, but I don't remember honestly.
What did you like the post punk Manchester bands that you influenced, like Joy Division, the Smiths, these bands that came out of Manchester after you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Stone Roses. I
Yeah.
love the Stone Roses, and Manny and Ian are friends. Um, but I remember, when we were starting off, that the Roses were like, they used to follow us and dig what they were seeing.
They were
Um,
booked at the start, weren't they? Stone Roses.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
brilliant.
very, very much so. Um, but yeah, I loved it all because I think that because to me the early movement, punk rock was just an attitude. Punk rock is a state of mind. It's an attitude. It's about being yourself, however you express that through music. But it was the second generation punk, which was that very fast, screamy, which really seemed to label it, in for me, not in a good way. Because there was a lot. Listen, there's a lot of good bands that do their thing, but there's also a lot of bands that sound like they're shitting out a pineapple when they're singing. So, one of them. So when those Manchester bands came after the punk thing, I thought they were fucking great. Thought it were brilliant. Brilliant. All of them, great. Um, so yeah, it was just a very, very healthy, thriving scene.
It is a. There's a lots of brilliant bands that have come out of Manchester, aren't there?
Well, fucking no one more brilliant than Oasis.
It's
Fucking
crazy,
love
isn't it, when you think about it, the amount of good bands that come out of that city.
it's in the water, Ethan. I'm telling you, man, it's in the water because you know, early on when we were getting to go and play the Roxy Club and that, there was such a stigma being from Manchester because there was only then it was like 10cc, Sad Cafe, a lot of these kind of progressive rock, all great at what they do, but it was that. So there was never any kind of street level bands. And when we were lucky enough to be invited to go and play the Hope and Anchor in the Roxy Club, there was a stigma with it. The people thought it was like fucking Coronation Street coming down. Honestly, thought we were a bunch of fucking yokels. And we got into it a couple of times. A couple of times with a couple of people got some slaps because they thought we were, fucking like Emmerdale Farm or Coronation Street. So, but that all changed as time went on. And then when Oasis hit, it was like, fucking look at you now, cunts. You know, hey, so because this is the North. So yeah, tons of great bands come out the North. Brilliant, brilliant. I saw James that were co-headlining with Johnny Marr, and I thought they were fucking brilliant. Thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
It's they're all good, man. All is welcome, and it's all from the North, and it all has that own unique spirit and attitude.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you mentioned before you did an album with Gary Holton, actor
Mm.
and musician. What was he like? Like I said before, I'm a big fan of Alfie Simpet.
Oh, I love Gary. He used to come and see us in London. I had a band called the Monsters, which was it was me and the singer from Dead Fingers Talk, who Rono had produced. Mick had produced their debut album, and Mick says to me, "There's this great singer. You should do something with him." So of course, we hook up and we start writing and do. So, but it was great, man. He was such a talented singer and lyric writer. But Gary, and we were doing the circuit in London because I was living there at the time. So Gary would turn up at these shows, and I got to know him because he always reminded me of Ronnie Wood. I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
got the big nose and the spiky hair. But he was great, man. But I remember him from the heavy metal kids, and he
yeah.
was always very outspoken and dangerous. Um, and so I got to know Gary, and he's like, "Look, we should." He said, "I love you playing. We should do some recording." So I was like, "Yeah, fucking love to." And at the time, Gary had a big hit in Norway, and that part of the that area. He was big in Sweden, Denmark, and so we wrote these bunch of songs. And he says, "Look, we'll do the album in Norway." So I'm like, "Okay." So he goes, "I'll come in a few days after because I think he had Alvida saying or one of those things. He was doing the acting thing." Um, and I remember I get to the studio, and it's the musicians are there, and they all look like they're off a fucking Russian trawler. Long hair, beards, polar neck sweaters, very Nordic. And they were playing The Deer Hunter perfectly, the soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got so intimidated because I was like, fuck, man. They were like, down, 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 down. And it was note perfect. And then I introduced myself and I said, well, the songs kind of go like this. And they were very kind of facesy. But what I found is technically they were brilliant, but they lack feel. They were like metronome every time perfect. And I was like, no, it needs to be a little looser, like the Faces or the Stones. But eventually we got there and my nerves subsided and I managed to kind of loosen them up. But it was great, man. Gary was a great front man, a great actor, and an all around good dude. And he left us too soon, man. He really did.
Yeah, yeah. Did you write the album together then?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Was that in Norway or did you write it over here?
No, we wrote it in London,
Yeah.
and he had a flat in Chiswick Way, I think. And so I used to go around there with the guitar, the old fashioned way. Yeah, the old fashioned way. Yeah, in the room with someone actually playing. Now it's like I'll send you the stems through the internet. So yeah, we wrote the album in London and went off to record it. And then we only did I think we only did two shows, but we had Glenn Matlock on bass, which was great. Yeah, and then yeah, he had other commitments with the filming, and then as I said, it was a very untimely death. I was very, very upset when Gary passed. I think
Yeah.
we would have done good stuff together, because we had like plans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had plans. It wasn't just let's because we knew there was a nice chemistry there, and yeah, and so it was yeah, it was a bit of a bummer, that's for sure.
Did it come out in 1989, that album?
I think so.
How could he died in 1985? How could it came out like so
That's
long?
that's right. Yeah. Well, what I wanted to do is there was a small label that we're going to put it out anyway when he was still with us. And then I spoke to his girlfriend. He had a kid, and I says, "Look, I want to put this out, and we can give you half the whatever we're going to get. We'll give it to." He had a son called Red,
Yeah.
and so I knew the mother was called Sue, and so that's how it came out. So it was nice to actually, even though it wasn't a large amount, it was nice to say there's a little something, and it'd be great just to have it out so the fucking world could hear it.
Yeah, it was nice of you to do that and give like you say support the kid really.
Well, it's just, it was just that's what was put on the table, and I thought, they need to be behind it, and so we should do that. Yeah.
Well, we spoke about the first two Slaughter and the Dogs albums. You released three more after that with Slaughter and the Dogs. Have you got a favourite from those later three?
Yeah, the last one we did called Vicious, which we recorded out here, and it was on a label called Cleopatra Records. Um, and that, funny enough, that was the best reviewed album of our career.
Really?
Was the last official one. So yeah, I have fond memories of that, and we recorded it out here. and it was great. It really fun, and it's guitar heavy, and that's what they said. They said, "Look, we want guitar heavy from you," and so that's what we gave them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you mentioned before, you like it's over with Slaughter of the Dogs. Is that like totally finished with it now, or can you see a reunion or anything?
No, 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 not well, not with one of the singers. No, absolutely not. So we are actually doing two shows. We're doing one in Manchester in April. It's the original founding members without the singer. So, but we're going to bring a keyboard player in. So it's the three. It's Howard Bates, the original bass player, Brian Grantham, the original drummer, and me. And I'm going to sing. We're going to bring a keyboard player in, so then we can do both albums. So we're going to do one show in Manchester on April the 6th at Club Rebellion. And then we're headlining Rebellion Festival in the summer on August the 6th, I think, or August the 8th, I think.
What
So we may do another album. I'm not sure yet.
was the illegal thing over the name?
Yeah, what he did, I'll try and condense it because I didn't really want to fucking bore you to death, is I went out with the Heartbreakers, the remaining Heartbreakers. So Walter Lure, who was in the Heartbreakers, I knew the Heartbreakers from obviously back in the day, and Walter was going out, and so there's a mutual friend who just said, "Look, you should." Walter's playing LA, so I went down, and it actually gone out with Mike Ness from Social Distortion, Glenn and Clem Burke from Blondie, and they were playing with Walter out here, but that was just a kind of a one-off thing. So Walter was playing a few months later in LA, and I went down and I ended up getting up and doing "You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory" with Walter, and I knew him from back in the day. So we were like, yeah, we should fucking do something. So we booked a tour of the US and then Japan, and with Slaughter, I never. It wasn't like a constant tour album, because I do other things and I play with other people. But I also wanted to keep it fairly selective and not overstay your welcome at the party, if you like. So I called up the lads and I said, look, I'm going to do the singer. I said, I'm doing this thing with the Heartbreakers, with Walter. And there was like silence on the phone. So I went, oh, okay, all right. I said, anyway, we're not doing anything. We've got no plans. And then the phone went dead, which was revealing rather than saying, oh, that's fucking cool, Mick, go and have some fun. And then the tour was booked for about 3 months after that. So the States, Japan, and the venues, the old singer was contacting the venues saying, I'm going to sue you if you say it's Mick Rossi. No, Walter Lure's LAMF featuring Mick Rossi from Slaughter the Dogs, which is a fact.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not, and I'm a founding member. You can't fucking do. Anyway, he copyrighted the name behind all our backs, and then threatened every promoter with legal action, which was so fucking uncool. Even when we did the UK, it was like, well, you can use my name if you pay me like $2 grand. It's all nonsense. So we basically took him to court and won the name back about 6 months ago.
Ah,
And so we're like, yeah, fuck it. We're going to go and do some shows and have some fun.
it's pretty petty, that, isn't it?
Oh, Ethan, listen, man, I could talk to you 3 hours about, you know, how low, he goes. But yeah, but it's as I said, kind of seems to blame me for having no talent. I don't understand that.
How do you feel about it? Like, have you moved on from it, or does it kind of hurt really? Because he is an
It
ex-friend,
did
ex-habit.
it did at first. There was a sting, and you like I grew up with this kid. I mean this. So no, no, no. I mean, at first is the initial kind of you feel wounded, And certainly today, look, social media it's a great thing, but it's also a curse because you can get spineless people who sit behind a keyboard and press send, and it makes them feel relevant. It makes them feel important. I mean, what you're doing is wonderful. It's a wonderful show, and I've looked at some of your interviews that you've done. I think they're wonderful, and this
Oh,
this
thank
is
you.
like it's a great platform to speak to bands or people and be interviewed. It really is wonderful. So that's and behind the curtain, it's like we may find out something we don't know about you or what happened. So these things like this are wonderful, but you get the other side of that, which is people are very, very spineless and they want to be engaged. And if you engage them, it makes them feel relevant and important. So at first, like, yeah, I was kind of wounded, but then it came to me that it was like, this is how he must have felt all along to have that rage inside and that jealousy. So no, I'm fucking cool, man. I mean, I did an acoustic album during lockdown, which was really well received, which was great. And then I have a band called Gun Street, Mick Rossi's Gun Street. I'm on the second album now. Funny enough, which is a couple of the tracks are being mixed by Owen Morris from
Oh,
Oasis.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we've got Glenn Matlock on it. He's on a few tracks. We got Morgan Fisher from Queen and Mott the Hoople on keyboards. So I'm well past that, well past it, man. So I feel pretty good. So I don't really look back.
No, but at least you've still got a good relationship with the other two original members.
Oh, of course, because listen, this stage of the game, man, it's like all that nonsense and rallying your ego being bruised and the insecure. That happens when you're a kid.
Yeah,
It really does. It's so at this stage of the game, it's really important who you choose to hang out with and who you choose to get in a fucking van with or you choose to get on stage with. So yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have a great relationship with the remaining members. They're all good guys. We see it for what it is. Um, and so yeah, I have a good team of people. I mean, I have friends, Ethan, that I've had since I was a kid, and they're still my friends. And some of them have gone on to be very, very successful. And that if you maintain friendship, it's revealing that your character's pretty good.
yeah,
So yeah, I have a really good relationship with all those old crew that we used to run with. Um, so yeah, I'm very fortunate and very happy that hence doing the slaughter things. It was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do a couple of gigs. We'll do one at the big festival, and it'll be fun.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we'll kind of reclaim some credibility because there's a lot of damage done through the social media from that person. So let's go and have a bit of fun, and that's what it is.
Yeah, like you said, well, it's as much your band and the other two members as it is in it, so.
Oh fuck yeah! I mean, I wrote all the fucking songs. I mean, for fuck's sake, yeah. I was listen. Collectively, it's a band that creates it. Um, and so no one individual can say, you know what, I'm taking my ball and you can fuck off
Yeah, yeah.
because you can't do that. So it's yeah, it's everyone's band.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You
Hmm.
briefly mentioned their solo albums, your acoustic one, All the Saints and All the Souls.
Hmm.
Obviously, you're well known for Slaughter of the Dogs, these electric guitar riffs and in your face guitar. What were it out of your comfort zone a bit doing an acoustic album?
I actually wasn't actually Ethan because I I I always loved melody, and even in Slaughter, I tried to put as much into it as possible. Even my solos even like Dame to Blame and Since You Went Away, there's I was very young, but I was very conscious of trying to just put melody in. I'm not a fan of. I'm just not a fan of that. There's room for it, but it's not my bag. And I remember Mick saying, that you can say a lot more with less. And so the economics of what Rano did were on Transformer and Ziggy and all that. Fucking brilliant. So I'd always been a fan of melody. So in terms of writing, after Slaughter, certainly with Gary, it wasn't just all full on Les Paul. So I was very versed in writing acoustic stuff, and I really love, uh, even if you take like the Lady Grinning Soul off Aladdin Sane, it's a slow acoustic song. Um, Maggie May, You Wear It Well, these Life's a Gas, Mark Bolan, these are all great acoustic songs. So with Saints, I wanted to just go in and just kind of, because it was lockdown. I know it sounds cliche. I was going fucking nuts. So I thought, I'm going to go in, book some time, and just kind of get these acoustic songs that I've had sticking around. But it kind of outgrew me as I was progressing, because then I started to get in strings, cello players, piano players. But it was wonderful because it was not long after that nonsense had kind of been put out on social media. And so this was very freeing and liberating for me. So I embraced it. Um, and and the reviews for it worldwide were fucking great. So I was really I was just very fucking happy and thrilled by it.
Well, Give Me the Dream and Why Must I Cry, my favourite songs off the album. And
Oh, thanks.
I think your voice is brilliant on the album. And you said before when Morrissey came in, you wasn't a comfortable singer. So when did that change, really?
Um, I think over the years, you do it a little bit more and a little bit more. Uh, but I had a band briefly called the Duelists, and I was singing and playing in that, and that was really a great training ground for me. And we got a little bit of heat in London at the time, but it was very much the Les Paul was a swear word then, because it was very much synthesizers and the floppy fringe. So a lot of floppy fringes going on, and so we were out not in vogue, but it really helped me have the confidence and yeah, the confidence and strengthen my voice to be able to do. So when it comes to Saints, I was like, fuck yeah, yeah. Because you know what, Ethan, too. I mean, I think if you truly, in any of the arts, if you truly come from a place of honesty, playing, painting, acting, singing, if it comes from your soul, it will resonate with people.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be the greatest singer. You look at Joe Strummer, uniquely Joe, because it comes from the very soul. And so I always try to, and certainly with Saints, it was a very important record for me. So I was coming from a place of honesty and singing my heart out. So and Give Me the Dream, that I was in it, and also Midnight Dream. I think, yeah, and it was from years of like doing the stuff with the Duelists and slowly doing a bit more and a bit more. So I felt really comfortable once we got into the studio.
How did Mick Rossi's Gun Street Band come about? 'Cause you've done the album in 2023.
Yeah. Well, after the Slaughter thing, I mean, I didn't just want to be kind of boxed in, because doing all the Saints was like so much fucking fun to use keyboards and strings, and this was in my DNA as a kid, because I was like Mick Ronson and Mike Garson, and so it never leaves you. So when I did Saints, I was like, I always knew I wanted to do it, because people were like with Saints like, well, he's done a fucking acoustic album, big, but because I'm known for like a pretty, raunchy Les Paul type thing. But I always knew I wanted to do an electric record after Saints. And I thought I didn't want it just to be me, so I wanted it to be a band's name. And so trying to get a band's name, Ethan, it's the fucking hardest thing. You sit down and you're like, the Midnight Rebels, not shit, because they sound shit until you hit someone else says them, and then they sound good, or it's out there. Then you're like, well, that's a good name. So I was racking my brains, and I always wanted it to be a band. And then I happened on Gun Street because my family's half Italian. My dad was Italian. So in the 30s and 40s, when Rossi's emigrated from Monte Cassino, they landed in Ancoats, which is the outskirts of Manchester, and they lived on Gun Street. It was called Gun Street. Um, and this is a fact, man, that I think it was around 30% or 40% of the people who lived on Gun Street were musicians at that time. So this is, and it was Little Italy. So these are the Italian immigrants. So you're either in ice cream or laboring or music. So I thought that name means something to me, because my dad used to play on those streets as a kid. And so that's how the name came about. And I felt comfortable it not just being me, so kind of wanted to present it as a band. And after Saints, I'd already written almost all of Gum Street because I knew I wanted to come back and do an electric album. And the label Secret Records, they already says, yeah, we're down with that, Mick. It's a small indie label. We'll do the Gun Street record. And I think Billy Duffy plays on the opening track, plays some blistering lead guitar. But it was great, man. And it was a natural progression not to go from the acoustic to this. And even on the Gun Street album, there's a couple of songs which are acoustic. There's one called The Brightest Star.
Yeah, that's my favorite, that one. I was
Oh,
going
yeah.
to.
Well, that's acoustic bass. So, it's always been there in terms of I like melodies and I like songs. That's why I love Noel Gallagher's writing. I think he's a fucking genius because
Yeah.
you take a song like Stop Crying Your Heart Out. I mean, it's epic, it's fantastic. So he can really go from all genres. If I Had a Gun is arguably one of the greatest love songs ever written for me.
Yeah, very good song, that, yeah.
So so yeah, I love it now that I'm in a position where I'm not boxed in to do the Slaughter thing. So I can still do a little bit of edgy stuff, but then I'm open to do ballads and whatever I want to do.
Well, you mentioned it's hard to pick a name. You'll need a good one to copyright later on down the line, won't you?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. Otherwise, some fucker might steal it and start threatening promoters. Oh, what a fucking shallow fucking idiot! My God. So
But
anyway,
yeah, it's a great album, that, and it's got a T-Rex Telegram sound. Is
mm.
glam rock still your favourite genre? Is it still up
Well, yeah, for me in general, the music that came out of the 70s, um, all of the stuff that, so I guess it would be termed as glam rock. I mean, but I love the Faces. But for me, the 70s was just a great period of songwriting. I mean, even fucking Slade, man. I mean, what's that one? Far, far, far away. It's a
there?
brilliant song. Yeah, so these were like real songs with real arrangements. Everyone could fucking play great. Um, and they were really well produced. So, and they were just infectious. They were great, uh, just a great period for music, as in film too. I feel the best films that we got then. So yeah, I'm still very much a glam rock lad. Um, but I love it all. I love the Beatles. I love Small Faces, the Kinks. But
Yeah.
certainly for me, what got into my DNA was that Lou Reed, Ronno, Roxy Music, Bolan, that sort of stuff.
When you look back at that glam rock period, it is pretty punk, really, because nobody was going, not like Bowie and Mark Bolan, nobody was going around wearing makeup and long hair like that at the time, really, were they? And
No, not a,
expressing themselves like that.
nobody. I mean, we had a lot of progressive rock bands, um, but nobody was like out there because Oscar Wilde once says, an idea is not an idea unless it provokes thought. And it's so true. And so a lot of those glam rock bands, they were pushing the boundaries and they were provoking thought, good or bad. It went a bit silly when you had, I think, Arthur Brown, who did Fire. He came on top of the pops. He had a Bunsen burner on his head, fucking like what they set on fire. But people took it to the extreme. But it was pushing the boundaries, and and provoking thought.
Yeah, well, yeah, Punk did that though, didn't it? Punk got a bit silly towards the end, didn't it?
Well, it did. It got a bit silly because it got to that second generation, third generation, um, where for me it was never that. It was always about a state of mind and attitude. Um, and you know, if you fucking if you put your soul into it and you're real, that will resonate and that will connect with someone, even if it's just your limited amount of people around you. Whereas the second generation thing, I think it was, to me, it kind of lacked, it lacked something because it was just like a mess coming at you.
Yeah, yeah. Do you mentioned before you're working on a new album at the moment? How much can you tell us about that?
It's called Rock and Roll Soul. It's got the Mick Rossi's Gone Street. It's called Rock and Roll Soul. It's finished. So just I got Howard Bates on it, the original bass player from Slaughter, who's fabulous. Um, Glenn Matlock jumped in on a few tracks. Morgan Fisher from Mott played on a few keyboards. Then Jerry Evans, who was on the first Gun Street album. Jerry played keyboards. Mark Reback, who was in the last version of Slaughter and joined me in the Heartbreakers, he's on it on drums. And then I got a real special guest. Her name is Anna Fantastic, and she used to sing with Prince. She actually co-wrote with Prince and has a song on the Batman album. But she's a wonderful singer. Lives out here in LA, so she's doing backups on it. And Owen Morris is mixed. I think 3 tracks, and then it's co-produced by me and a guy called Craig Parker Adams. Craig Parker Adams has a studio out here. I've done like 12 records with Craig over the years with different people. He's a Grammy-nominated producer in his own right. He's fucking brilliant, and he has a studio here called Winslow Court. So him and I co-produced. So it's good, man. There's a lot of good people involved, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully people are going to dig it.
Do you enjoy the production side of things?
I do, Ethan. I enjoy it a lot. I'm still fucking. I still get very excited going in a studio, and I love it because I love, taking an idea, even from here to and then love it being built from the ground up in the studio. I remember when we were doing Bite Back and Dale Griffin, the drummer from Mott, who was producing it. I always used to get into the studio because it was Utopia Studios, and it's the first time I'd been in a proper fucking studio. I mean, speakers as big as your house. It was like, fuck. And I always used to get there early and ask, what does this do? What does that? If you press that, what's that? And so towards the end, I could load a multi-track tape onto the thing. So I'd get into the studio and I'd have the session set up. So I took a great interest in it early on. So I do love it. I love it. I still don't know, I can't do the twiddly knob bits. I know what I want and what I hear. Um, and I know, okay, that's EQ. And if you do this, but if I want something, then Craig will do that. And then when we were doing the first Gun Street album, my blueprint was Aladdin Sane and Slider sonically. So I gave Craig those albums. I said, listen to them, just the sonics. And that's what we did for about a month because everything's digital. Craig rewired the studio to get as close to analog as possible because he has all this equipment from Frank Zappa. So it's all the old analog compressors and that. It was wonderful. So I get terribly excited in the studio. I really do. I fucking love it. I love it. You go in, you close the door, and it's like a different world.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
it's good. And like you say as well, you can see the song coming from basics to finished product, can't you, as
Well,
well?
for the ground up, and it's interesting because sometimes how you imagine it in your head, it'll be exactly like that and better, and then sometimes how you imagine in your head, won't be nothing like that. And
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it, adding as the layers start to be added in backing vocals or string arrangements or whatever it may be. So it's like you're discovering something every day. It's wonderful, you know.
Nowadays, do you write songs on an electric guitar, acoustic, or do you mix it up? Or
Both,
yeah.
mainly both actually. I have a Les Paul. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
So there's a Les Paul and an acoustic there. So and a little amp. So I both actually. It's songs are weird though, Ethan, because they will sometimes they'll just drop out the sky and they find you. They just appear and you have to fucking grab them. Um, and lyrics and all will just kind of just drop and you'll find yourself pretty much going through a song that's just happening. And so you grab it and thank Christ for these because
Yeah.
it can capture thought very quickly. And then some you'll doodle around, but yeah, I'm pretty prolific, you know. And since I've kind of not been confined just to doing the Slaughter the Dog stuff, which I never was because I did the Gary Holton stuff and other stuff,
Yeah.
but it's opened up. I feel a lot more open. So I think when you're open, you receive more, you know. So
Are you constantly playing guitar that then, or do you leave it a bit and go back to it?
I'm terrible fucking practicer. I don't practice, uh, but I do doodle, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
noodle what it is. But yeah, there's times when I won't touch it for a few days, but then it's kind of funny because you'll be watching a movie and you'll just pick it up and you're kind of just doodling around, you know. But yeah, most days I do have a bit of a play in terms of like knuckling down and practicing. Very rare, very rare I do that. And I've got to kind of because I'm doing this slaughter thing on April the 6th. Um, I've got to kind of knuckle down and keep putting it off, you know. But
Do they stay with you though? Like, have you got a proper practicer, or have this?
no, they kind of stay with you. They're kind of ingrained in you, but you need to just brush up, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but it that changes when you get in a rehearsal room. So yeah, you
yeah.
know, because in your head and in your living room, it all sounds great. But then you have to get in a rehearsal room, and then hopefully, you know, the band clicks. And it usually takes 2 or 3 days, I find, before the band kind of finds a groove.
What advice would you give to somebody wanting to start out on guitar?
Be true to yourself. Don't ask anyone's opinion. It doesn't matter. It's what you feel that's important. Stick with it. And you'll get there in the end. Because when I was first starting, there was like clumps where you're like, I'm still shit. I can only do this limited amount of things. I can't do this funny chord thing, you know. But eventually, it all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can do a bit more, and I can do a bit more. So stick with it. Be true to yourself. Don't listen to anyone else except yourself, and don't seek approval. Fuck that. Never seek approval. If you feel it's good enough.
Yeah, yeah, I agree there. 'Cause, like,
Mm.
if you learn it properly, like go to musical school or whatever, and learn chords or whatever, it takes away the magic, doesn't it, of spontaneous magic.
Well, I think what we have most important is your instinct, your
Yeah,
natural instinct. If you lose that, if you're void of that, you're a fucking robot, you know, because the human nature, your natural instinct on anything, it's so vital. And certainly for what we do, it's vital. So I think if you try and do it through a book, that's it, but it's soulless. It's it's like now, you know, you can harmonize your voice through a machine. You can, you know, everything can be done through a machine, but it hasn't got soul.
that's why a lot of music just sounds the same these days, isn't it? Because it's just
Of
all
course.
robotic.
Yeah, because it's you know, it can be great, but it hasn't got fucking soul. And you only get soul if it comes from within. And
Yeah,
thank Christ the machines can't fucking take that from us. I mean, you know, they're trying, but I think that's why I says, listen, don't seek anyone's approval. If you feel it and you feel you've done something that you like, that's good enough.
I've really enjoyed this episode, and it's been an absolute honour to speak to you. But just to finish off, you mentioned you've got the album and a couple of shows planned. What else have you got planned for the future?
Um, well, obviously get the new gun, the rock and roll soul out. There is I'm in talks now whether to do another Slaughter the Dogs album. So I'm kind of not sure. Uh, I'm still kind of mulling that over. Um, but I might do it. It might be nice to do and kind of bring, reclaim everything and bring it up to 2025 and do a fucking good street rock and roll record. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really it. Is keeping writing. I'm I'm 6 songs into the third Gun Street album.
All right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, which is great. So but yeah, that's just keep doing that and trying to be true to who we are.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And is there any like links you'd like me to leave to any, I don't know, social media or websites or anything?
Yeah, I'm not in any of them, but we do have we got a Mick Rossi's Gun Street Instagram. I don't know how you would link it though. I don't know how to do that. How would
I could do it in my description. I can copy it over and stuff. It's okay.
Oh yeah, whatever's out there, copy then. So there's a Mick Rossi's Gun Street Instagram, and there's a Slaughter the Dogs Instagram, but make sure it's our one. I think it's Mick Rossi from Slaughter the Dogs. Uh, and a Facebook page, it's Mick Rossi from Slaughter the Dogs Facebook page.
All right, nice one. Yeah, yeah. Is there
The
not?
link is in. Where you? So you're in Leeds, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to come to the Slaughter show on April the 6th, let me know. It's in Manchester. If you want to come, I'll hook you up. But no pressure.
No, nice one. Thank you. Yeah. Where was the other one in August? That festival you were saying? Where's that?
That's Rebellion Festival. That's in Blackpool.
Oh, is
It's
it?
it's
Yeah.
it's a huge festival and it's annual. I think Pill are doing it this year, The Damned. Um, and we've done it periodically, but that's in August in Blackpool. If you want to come to that, I can sort that out for you too. But that's like it's a 4-day festival over 4 days.
All
Um,
right.
it's great, man. It's great. It's like a nut house, it's crazy.
Yeah.
4 days, but in fact, the New York Dolls last gig was there.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, with Johansson and Sylvain. I think they were the only two remainers, but it's a great festival. Really, really great, very cool festival. So if you want to go to any of them, let me know.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And as I say, I could talk to you for hours. That's been a brilliant episode. I've really enjoyed it.
Ethan, thank you so much, man. Pleasure to talk to you. Pleasure to meet you and see you. And yeah, I was thrilled to be part of your show. And I think you're doing good stuff. So keep doing it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks again.
Don't seek anyone's approval. You don't need it.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
All right.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, man.
Bye. Bye.